We are back live. Second try. So let's wait for our guests to tune in again and our followers. Today we will be discussing about homeschooling, and our friends will answer a lot of our questions.
So we have our special
see.
guest, Edric Mendoza and Joy Mendoza.
Yes.
So are we successful this time, honey?
I'm so pressured. Paano ba to? Go live. Okay.
Alright, where are we?
Edric, mag-comment ka nga. Baka I can click on your comment. I can't seem to find you.
Alright, guys. So earlier, Doug and I were talking about homeschooling, and right now there's a growing interest in homeschooling. And I noticed the trend when we started the home quarantine. A lot of people started asking me how should they go about with homeschooling, and asking me all these questions, especially about social skills.
A lot. You actually have a bunch of questions that
I do
our
have a
fans.
list, but I don't wanna preempt it yet because you know
Okay.
I wanna ask Edric and Joy.
Nakakabitin.
Yeah.
Dami na nilang questions that are coming in. Unable to join.
Why?
It says unable to join.
Oh, that's so weird. The guest should request to go live with you.
The guest should request to go live with you.
Oh. Here na. That's what Edric said. Okay, there you go. Finally! Yes, we're successful!
Let's see. Request. We're requesting now, Edric. Here na.
Oh my God.
Okay, found you. Edric, we found you. Our viewers are waiting. Hide live. Go live. Okay. Go live. Bakit kayo unable to join, no?
We should have studied it first, babe.
Edric Mendoza.
Okay.
So just allow it, Edric. It says waiting for Edric now.
Should have studied.
Hey, is that
Oh my golly.
it? We did it. We did it. Okay.
Finally.
It's so
You know, I think it works if it's mobile. We were on the desktop. So
Oh,
so I
that's
just switched to
why.
mobile right now, and I was like, I wonder I did both, and then I saw the request on the mobile. So now we're
Yeah.
with you. I think it just works.
Yeah.
with mobile.
So
We
that's why
discovered
I'm
something
able
new
to
today,
join.
didn't we?
Yeah.
So hi guys, thank you for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Okay. Yeah, so now we're with Joy and Edric Mendoza.
I will introduce you guys first to all of our followers right now.
Sure.
Well, first off, they are our brother and sister in Christ. Okay, we go to the same church, and it's actually through Edric and Joy that we discovered and saw the first setup of a homeschooling in the house, diba? And
Yes.
and it was through Joy you actually saw the setup. And look now, we were able to make a classroom similar to you guys.
Yeah.
Yours
So
is the
there.
upgraded version.
That's the team
No,
Kramer souped up home.
Before we built the house in our place in Pasig, it was much smaller. But when I saw how organized yours was, I'm like, honey, we have to put this project in the new house, the new classroom.
yeah.
And this is what happened.
So I started taking down notes. Okay, this is how everything is done. And then
Yeah.
from there we picked up, and then this is the final
Yeah.
product of everything.
So the reason why we invited you guys is because during this quarantine, the questions heightened about homeschooling.
Yes.
Parang before it was parang divided pa. They were telling us, why are you guys homeschooling? Bring them to traditional. But now parang, oh my gosh, now that we're homeschooling our kid, it's been 4 to 5 weeks now. We're so interested about it. Can you answer some questions about it? And we don't know everything yet, only by experience. But you guys, Edric, diba? You are the chairman of Homeschool Global and chairman of Homeschool Association of the Philippines. So you can definitely answer a lot of these questions for us.
And Joy, you've been
That's right.
homeschooled by your mom
Yes.
And you know how it is, and I'm sure a lot of our viewers will be able to pick up something from you.
Yes. So shall we start, guys? Okay lang, we'll
Do
start
it.
Yeah.
asking
I'm gonna
questions.
get my
All
charger to make
right.
sure our
So,
phone keeps going.
What do you
okay.
Ah, okay. Yeah, so the phone doesn't die.
Oh my.
Oh
Good.
no,
Joy,
no.
Go.
Joy, how long were you homeschooled?
You know, I wasn't homeschooled super long because when my parents found out about it, it was later on. So if you look at our family, the ones who were homeschooled for longer are the smarter ones.
Yeah. That's the
So,
joke.
Which is Carolyn and Paul.
so
The younger
Carolyn and
ones.
Candy were
Candy.
homeschooled the longest, and I
Okay.
think academically they probably did the best among all of us.
You're just being
But still,
humble.
I mean, it was really an amazing experience, and it really brought our family closer together, and it really made me love learning.
Okay.
All right. So I'll go ahead and start asking questions. These
Go for
questions
it.
were asked by my Instagram followers, and some are also from Facebook. So first question: is it hard to homeschool?
You should
So
answer that. What
basic,
do
di
you
ba?
think?
Is it hard to
What has
homeschool?
it
Kasi
been?
some moms or dads, they don't feel like they're qualified to teach their children one-on-one.
Mm.
So
Yeah, I
how do
think
you do it?
I think we're so blessed during this time when there's so much access to information. Like I would say years ago, it probably would have been a lot harder. But now, if I don't know something as a mom, I can easily research it. If I don't know how to present a lesson in a creative way, I can research it online. So I would say that like this day and age is probably one of the best times to really homeschool because of technology, because of the resources that are currently available, and because there's been so many more homeschooling materials created with parents in mind that it's actually much easier to homeschool now than ever before.
Yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
want to jump in there. Trying to get the lighting. It looks
Why
so
do we
weird,
look so
right?
exposed?
I'm fixing the cable also. I wasn't expecting this. So I want to say that, as I think you guys have been experiencing it also, right? The difficulty of homeschooling is really whether a parent remembers that the heart and soul of it is good parenting, right?
Yes,
So
it's
if a
intentional
parent
parenting.
yeah, if a parent is equipped with basic parenting tools like getting our kids to obey, right, getting a good discipline system with our kids so that when the learning now comes in, they can start sitting down and going to their desk and doing their work. So the challenge really in homeschooling is for parents to ask themselves, can I focus on the parenting aspect first and well so that the learning aspect will follow naturally? That's what we're seeing now,
Yeah.
because all the questions I'm sure that you've been asked about homeschooling and we've been asked also has sort of been flattened because of the ECQ, right? So
Yeah.
the question now really is, okay, my kids are stuck with me at home and they have to learn. So how do I do it? The question is whether they can now start embracing and adopting good parenting skills so that they might be able to guide the kids in the
That's
learning
exactly.
that
Mhm.
follows. Yeah.
Exactly. A lot of people actually ask me, how do you get your kids to obey? Sit down
Ah,
and really listen to you. Because my kids are so makukulit. That's what they always say. They're so makulit. They don't listen to me. I'm losing my patience. And so I also lose my patience every now and then. And sometimes I raise my voice. But then I also go back to, what is my point in homeschooling my kids? Do I want them to learn or do I want them to be scared? So I have to always remind myself. But Joy, what about you? You have 6 kids. How do you get 5 of your kids to listen and to sit down and do their work?
Well, I think it's exactly what you said. I mean, what Edgy was also mentioning. It's really a lot of it's the parenting, and you have to be very intentional with letting them know that you are the parent first, and you're going to discipline them if they don't obey it, if they don't listen to you. But then balancing all of that with like a loving, very close and intimate
you did it.
relationship with them. With my kids, I think, and with anybody who's starting to do this because they're forced to do it or because they're actually homeschooling, you have to give yourself some time to adjust. Because if your kids have been used to listening to a teacher, and been in a classroom where they have to really sit at a desk and pay attention. There's going to be a transition period when you're doing it at home. And so you're going to have to get into the groove of things. I'm sure you experienced this at the beginning, right? Because your kids went to school, and then as you homeschooled them, you also had to kind of find your groove and find a schedule that worked and find a system that you could implement in the home that met the needs of your kids and your homeschooling lifestyle. So I think it's the same way. You know, you come up with a schedule for your family. And for us, we start at 9 a.m. and then we finish about 12:30 for the younger ones. And then the older ones, they'll extend into the afternoon. So with the younger ones, and I'm sure you see this with Gavin, you have to do more hand holding, right? Because he may not have all the like basic skills mastered yet. So you need to really work with him on becoming an excellent reader, excellent at comprehension, and then being able to articulate himself, whether it's through writing or orally. And then as they develop those skills, they've actually become more independent as homeschoolers, so that I don't have to do all the teaching for all my kids all the time. The older ones can teach themselves. And it's the same thing with those of you who are, you know, having to teach your kids at home right now because of COVID. The older ones, you can trust them to actually learn a lot of this stuff on their own.
Yeah.
Like Kendra.
Like Kendra does that.
Yeah, we don't want to ever spoon feed our kids when it comes to learning as they grow older, because the goal is to really get them to, you know, realize that, hey, if I want to learn something, I can find the resources to do it. I can read, I can do my own research. So did you want to add to
I want to
that?
jump in.
Yeah.
So really quick, how do you get your kids to obey, right?
That was the question.
How do you get them to obey?
It's okay, you
answered it. You answered it.
Right. Joy answered a lot. I just wanted to jump in and add really quick practical things also. You know, I think you guys remember Josh McDowell, right? He said it best. Rules without relationship leads to rebellion, right? So the key is really rules and a relationship. If you want your kids to obey, whether it's for learning or getting off their gadgets because they're just using it so much now that it's ECQ, what are the rules that you can put in place to help make sure that they actually will do it? So if you want to have rules that work, you need to make sure you have what's called a ceiling and a floor. So a ceiling would be an incentive. If they do it right, what do they get generally, right? And the floor must be the consequence. If they don't do it, what is the consequence? Because if there's no consequence and it's just a ceiling incentive, then they'll say, well, is it worth it for me to get that? Or, no, it's okay. I'll just stay on my gadget, or I won't do my homeschool work, right? But if there's a consequence as a floor, then they realize if I don't do it, what's my trade-off? If I do it, I get the incentive. So more or most often in the time, they'll actually do it. So that's one way to get them to obey. Create a floor and a ceiling so that they will now say, you know what, if I do this, there's an incentive, I'm going to do it. And if I don't, there's a consequence. So I'm going to go and do it. It's a win for me. And then the relationships, you know, I think we don't have to unpack all that now, but relationships has everything to do with making sure that they know that mom or dad really just enjoys their company. So now that when people are in ECQ, we tell them, go into your kids' worlds, find out what they like to do and do what they like to do instead of forcing them to do what you like to do. Does that make sense?
For you guys, so it seemed like homeschooling fits so naturally with your lifestyle and with your parenting. So why was it easy for you guys to all of a sudden get your kids to be on board about homeschooling?
Well, I want to backtrack a little bit, because even if we've been posting about our kids being homeschooled, they're still wondering, why did you guys homeschool? Why are you guys homeschooling your kids? And just to repeat that, we were wasting so much time in traffic already. The schedule was wake up at 5 a.m., travel 5:30 or 6 to get to school at 7. And then at 3 o'clock dismissal, they will arrive around 4:30. Then they come home, they still have to do homework. And then they'll finish around 6 or 7. So basically, they are studying pretty much for half the day.
It's not even half of the day. It's already almost
12 hours pretty much, diba? So I said, hun, let's look into this homeschooling. And I feel like we can control our time better. Right now, our current schedule is wake up at 8:30 for the kids. They will still shower. They will still get ready. And then at 9 o'clock, they will start here at the classroom. And then they will finish around 2, 3 o'clock, depending on the progress that they've done. So they have the whole afternoon from 3 o'clock onwards to do other activities pa, which the traffic took away. Diba?
By the way, we also homeschool only 4 times a week.
Yes.
So on
Yes.
Thursdays, they don't homeschool.
Us
They
also.
just do class. Yeah,
4 times din kayo?
That's our break.
yeah, that's our
That's
break.
your break.
Exactly.
So that's been our setup, and every third and going into homeschooling, I would have one consistent question by everybody. Isn't their social skills gonna
Suffer.
suffer? And
Yeah.
I said, well, it depends. If you're just gonna keep them locked in your house and do no activities and don't, we set up play dates all the time. At what you guys did at Homeschool Global, every Thursdays we enroll them to taekwondo, we enroll them to ballet, to art, to theater. So tell me, how are they gonna miss out on these social skills, diba?
Yeah, so I want to ask, like, Joy and Edric, I'm sure you also get a lot of questions about social skills and how our kids are able to socialize with other children, and do they know how to make friends? How do they deal with adults? So I want to hear from you guys, because I oftenly talk about it in some of my posts, and I also talk about it when I answer questions. But what about you guys? What is your take on social skills and homeschooling?
Yeah, so in the world today, there's only really two big questions that are consistent, and one of them is what we call the big S, social skills. The other one is the big A, right? So the way
Academics, yeah.
big A, academics, will they do well academically, even if we're not seasoned educators with all the degrees?
Yeah.
So on the social skills, we have to remember that the problems of social skills are present actually in both modes, whether they're in school or not in school. There are social skill problems.
That's
For example, if a child gets bullied in school, that's a social skill problem. If a child does not feel like they fit in a school, that's a social skill problem, right? So it's not the environment that will make it better than the other. It really has to do a lot with how the parents are able to help the child develop those skills. Does that make sense? So
Yes,
there's
because
school-
can I just interrupt for a bit?
Go ahead.
Like, I remember that saying, character building begins at home.
Well
So
said.
everything really starts with the parents and how they uplift their children, how they secure their children.
Yeah, so exactly to your point, right? So let's say they're in school and they get bullied. You're gonna have to deal with that social skill problem. As a parent, you talk to the child, whether the child is the bully or the victim, you'll have to help work with them, right? So good parenting will come in there. Why they were a bully is also a question as far as parenting is concerned. In the homeschooling space, the same is true exactly to Doug's point. Good parents will obviously find ways to make sure that the children are able to get healthy interaction. It could be through church groups. Both of us are in church. There's many ways to socialize there. It could be through family gatherings. And the Filipinos have so many families that even if they're not family, they're like family, right? So their interactions.
Yeah.
And then, as you said, there are structured ways to do that through classes. And in these classes, they get to interact what we like to call vertically. And when you look at socialization from a psychologist standpoint, you prefer vertical socialization versus horizontal. Why? A child that learns to interact with older kids and younger kids is better adjusted than a child who learns to just socialize with peers. Does that make sense? So
Yes.
so that's how we would frame, or that's how I would answer the question of socialization. The question is, as a parent, are you able to intentionally create environment so that the child will develop the right social skills? And that's one last point that we need to cover there. Social skills can be good and bad. We obviously want them to develop the right social skills. And our firm belief, anywhere you go across cultures, is the best people to create the right social skills would be with the family and the parents, because the parents and the family would have the best intention for the children and would want them to develop good manners, good character, all these things.
Yeah.
So,
And it's in the home situation, that's when kids really need to practice what it means to share, what it means to think about others as more important than themselves, what it means to submit to the authority. These are all important social skills. How people should behave properly in social environments, which is what socialization should be about. So, for example, when a child needs to learn to forgive a sibling, that's stuff that they can learn at home, and they're going to take that now into their other relationships. Whether it's with peers or with cousins or eventually with classmates if they go into the conventional school. And they can apply those same things that they're learning at home to help them learn how to be good friends. And when we really want to get our kids to the point where it's not just about what can friends do for me or how many friends do I have, but what can I do for others, right? How can I be a blessing to the people around me? You know, we try to train our kids, like when you're in a situation, you see somebody who feels left out or looks like they're alone and nobody's paying attention, you go talk to them and reach out to them. And I think that's what we want to get our kids to become, right? The kind of people who, when they're in a social gathering, they know how to treat people with kindness, with respect, how to honor one another, how to share. And you can do all those things at home. You can train all those things at home, actually.
Yeah.
And, no?
So, the next question I want to ask is, a lot of people think that they don't believe in homeschool because they actually think like we went to National Bookstore and picked math and English and whatever subjects we could gather up and apply it here. So that's a misunderstanding. We're actually following a curriculum, a structure, which Homeschool Global provided. So the question is, if there are moms or dads asking this, how can I start homeschooling my kids? What's the first step?
First step in wanting to homeschool your kids is you need to set up goals. Set up goals, right? We like to tell parents everywhere, if you're going to choose to homeschool, you want to go back to what is your why? And that is actually a parenting question more than it is an academic question. If our kids ask us, Mommy, how come I can't go on this YouTube site? Why can't I download this app? Why do I have to study math? Why do I have to homeschool? Why can't I go to school? All of those questions go back to our why. In other words, what is the end goal? What is the vision we have for our children, right? So if you're asking what is the first thing they need to do, they need to ask that. Why am I considering homeschooling? And when you answer that honestly, depending on the answer, then it will help you proceed to the next steps or actually choose something else. Because let's face it, homeschooling is not the savior of the world, right? It is an amazing education option, but it's just not for everybody. So if they're considering homeschooling, the first step is ask your why. And what we have seen as the why that makes sense is if you want to say things like, my goal is actually to help my children to love God, serve God, get to know Him. And I want to be the one that will primarily influence and help shape that.
And
then
pass on the values that I believe are important. Yeah.
Homeschooling can help do that, because when you homeschool, you'll be the primary influence.
Yes.
If you want to say things like, well, I'm looking for a personalized approach to learning, which is in the education sphere, really the goal of any good education. It is a tailor-fit education to the child. If you're saying, I want that, I want to find an environment to create that for my child, then homeschooling would be for you. So that would be the first, Doc, is make sure you know your reason for doing it, because people will say things like, alam mo, nagtitipid kami, or medyo nahihirapan kami, we're struggling financially, and so maybe homeschooling is a good option because it's cheaper and it will save money.
Yeah.
And although that's not a bad reason, if that's your main reason, you might not go very far, and we've seen that, right? So
Actually, that's my next question
go ahead.
about homeschooling. If it's a lot of my followers always ask me, is homeschooling expensive? Pang mayaman lang yan. Hindi yan pwede sa amin. Kayo lang pwede dyan.
Okay, so what's your answer? What do you say?
Well, I say, I always say that my case is different because I'm also a working mom. So I have a teacher. So it's teacher and I that are partners. But I also teach my kids. I'm also there. But there are times I have to leave because I have to attend to a shoot, or I have to do some business meetings and stuff like that. But then I say homeschooling, it depends. It depends on, it depends on your books. It depends on the curriculum that you get. And it depends on your, where you're comparing it to. I mean, comparing to the tuition fee of your school right now, to the tuition fee that homeschooling has right now. So when I think of the tuition fee of my kids before, then I'll say that this is cheaper, right?
Exactly. So, I mean, the straight answer is obviously it's going to be cheaper. I mean, enrollment fee versus schools and homeschool across the board will be significantly cheaper, because you're not paying for the infrastructure, right? When you go to a school, you're paying for all of that infrastructure, right? The cost of the equipment, the facility, the people. In homeschooling, it's all you. So depending on the infrastructure you get with your provider like Homeschool Global, then that's where the fees vary. But
And
so
I want to say also, it depends on how you want to enrich your homeschooling experience, right? Because, for example, if you're now going to think of traveling as part of your homeschool experience, if you want to learn about, the landmarks of the Philippines, but instead of just reading from a book, you're going to say, hey, kids, we're actually going to take trips to different parts of the Philippines so that you'll actually experience these places, then that can be more costly.
Yep.
And yet it's going to, building family memories and also their learning. And then what they can do is they can do a report on it or a presentation on what they learned. And that's still part of their learning, but there's a cost involved. So you get to decide now, what do we really want to invest in? What do you want to spend on in terms of our children's education, and how do we want to enrich it? And in some cases like Cheska, people do hire tutors because either they don't have all the time to do it themselves, or they don't feel as confident teaching a subject area. So for me, before, I hired a tutor for Filipino, and it wasn't that expensive. I think it was 200 pesos an hour.
why, babe? You can't teach Filipino? What? So surprising.
I'm not that
I probably
good, that's all. So I didn't want to negatively affect their experience.
Yeah.
So I think
they probably want to find out how much.
Sure. Yeah. So tuition fees for homeschooling, right? So if you compare it to a school, schools to be what, 100, 150, 200, 250
no less. Some would be
for a school, generally good schools, right? For
In Metro Manila.
It depends, yeah.
Metro Manila, yeah.
depends.
So it can range maybe some 70, 80. For a homeschooling program, tuition fees are anywhere from 15 to 30,000, 35,000 just tuition, right? So then you add books and other extracurriculars like the classes you guys were talking about. So if you just compare that, there's clearly a savings. But we need to highlight this, and Joy said it well. And I said this earlier, right? Don't decide to homeschool just because of the cost. I'm a financial planner, and I would say from a financial standpoint, it makes sense. But if that's your main reason for homeschooling, it won't really get you very far, because some people, in their zeal to help the child learn, as Joy said, they might spend for traveling, for books, for classes, for setting up the room like the Kramers, and those things will all add up.
And you guys live in a house just to have a homeschool room.
Seriously, some people after like,
That's you guys.
I want so many things for my kids. I have 5 enrichment classes. I have Mandarin. I have all these things. So we just want to make sure that is very, very clear. Tuition on tuition, clearly cheaper. But if that's the main reason, it can add up.
Yeah.
There are
Plus,
also many ways to save.
Yeah.
if you have siblings, diba? If you have siblings,
Yeah.
For every sibling, it gets lower, right?
it gets lower.
Right. There are.
It depends on the program.
So-
Like Homeschool Global, you should explain that.
So a number of programs have sibling fees, which effectively bring the price lower per student, right? So to your point, yes, the more kids, generally you can have a package where it's actually cheaper because each additional child is much lower. Like
For their kids.
right?
Yeah.
Like us, we have 6 kids, so that's a big package deal.
Okay, so my next question is homeschool accredited by DepEd? That's a common question always asked.
Wonderful. So Homeschool Global is actually one of the pioneer programs of DepEd. So we have been working with them for close to 20 years now. And, with that accreditation that we have helped them also learn best practices, what works. So now there are a number of other groups who are also offering homeschooling. And we've, sort of been privileged to help start that. And, a number of people that started homeschool programs were actually with our program before, and they learned, they wanted to be able to help others as well. So yeah, definitely accredited with DepEd in the Philippines. And we also have an accreditation that's out of the US for families that want more international sort of certification in case they plan to send their children to the US for...
That's us again.
Yes, like you and like us.
Yeah.
So
In the Middle East also, there's accreditation for people in the Middle East.
So in the Middle East, we also have accreditation with the equivalent Department of Education there. It's called the KHDA out of Dubai. So if there are families that are interested out of that area, they can also enroll in the program there.
I actually got a message from someone who's in Dubai and was asking, I'm in Dubai right now, and can I enroll my kids in Homeschool Global even if I'm in Dubai?
Yeah,
Yes.
for sure. So we
Homeschool
have
Global in
a
the Philippines. In the
yeah,
Philippines, is
yeah.
that
So
possible?
Homeschool Global is now global. So we have physical operation and offices and hubs like the one you saw in Ayala 30th, right? We have that in 8 places in the Philippines and in 3 places in the Middle East, so Dubai and Abu Dhabi. And we've just recently launched in Qatar as well. So they can call the
Wow.
team there, they can meet families there, they can meet advisors there, they can choose their books there as well. So everything that you would get here is available in those locations I mentioned: Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and Qatar.
Yeah, and so for my next question, they always ask me this as well. Do homeschoolers have standardized tests? Do they have SAT tests too?
Yeah, so the standardized tests are depending on what they're for, right? So homeschoolers can get standardized tests on their own 2 ways. They can do it through the Department of Education directly or through private testing centers that are all over the Philippines and the world. For Homeschool Global, the standardized testing we have follows 2 formats, right? One is called the AllSat Math, and I'm not going to go into the detail of what that means. It's an international test out of the US, done at the end. And there's also a standardized test called Moby Max. But this is more of a
Mhm.
diagnostic. So there are certain levels where you need to take a standardized test to enter the higher levels of education. And what parents can do to get that is they can go to private centers. For example, our son going off to college will have to take the SATs because we're under a US program. So we are signing up with a private group that actually conducts it out of Faith Academy, which you guys
Mhm.
know. And then
Mhm.
they go with other students to take the SATs there.
Okay, okay. Now, do homeschool kids have graduate rights too? Do they graduate? Do they have the whole shebang, you know? Do they get awards? Do they march with their classmates, their fellow homeschoolers?
They can. So in the Philippines, the way they can do that currently is through providers like Homeschool Global, right? So our provider, we have maybe what, 300-400 students that graduate each graduation, and because there's growing numbers, it's twice a year out of Manila. We now have one out of the different hub areas, like in Cebu. There's one, their own graduation there already. So it's their usual shebang. They wear the togas, they march, the
Mm.
parents are there, they're given certificates, and there are special character awards. I
Graduation
think
picture?
graduation photo, right? The whole shebang. They sing a graduation song,
Oh yeah.
and then there's the rights. There's a graduation message. So yes, the infrastructure is in place already for programs like that.
All right. And then another one. Do homeschoolers have an easy time getting into the college that they want?
Um, I'll speak from a entrance uh, statistic, right? How many homeschoolers are able to get into the top colleges in the Philippines? Very high. A very high percentage of them go to the top colleges. From Homeschool Global, we've been able to graduate quite a number, and they have gone to the top colleges. So Ateneo, UP, LaSalle, and these newer colleges, UANP, Enderan.
Mm.
Um, Even in the US, they've gone to NCAA Division I colleges as
Wow.
well. So the homeschoolers are able to get into good colleges. Um, the the only thing that we've observed is that from the professor's standpoint, they notice 2 things. Number one, there is an adjustment for homeschoolers because depending on the school, if it's a big school, it can get overwhelming for a homeschooler. You can imagine, right? Who's
Mm.
ever been to
Yeah.
school. So there's a little bit of social adjustment. That's the reality. But from an academic standpoint, the professors get surprised because, I guess maybe the mindset is when you're homeschooled, they don't expect you to push that hard academically. But we've heard from professors who have gone up to me. There's one guy from Enderan, and he's comfortable with me sharing. He said at one of the homeschool graduations, he said, I need to tell you something about homeschoolers, Edric. In my class, consistently, Every time it's finals, I will tell the whole class, if anyone has a line of 9 already, you do not have to take the final exam. If you want to, you can, to bump up your grade, but you don't have to. The homeschoolers in his class consistently, all of them will take the final exam and bump up their grades. So he was saying the way that these homeschoolers learn is they learn how to learn. So when they're in college, they're actually approaching the professor, asking them questions even outside of class because they love learning. And that's what happens. At the end of the semester, when the final grade comes out, generally they do very well. So those are the things we've noticed. They get into good colleges, and social skills, if it's a big school, there's a little bit of an adjustment. But academically, they so far they show a stellar track record.
Okay, what about when it comes to curriculum? What does homeschooling offer? And how do they get which curriculum do they know is best for their kids?
So assuming they go to Homeschool Global,
right?
And they've decided, I want to homeschool my child. So what's the next step?
Good. So earlier we talked about first step, answer your why. Second, go to a group that can help you, like maybe HG. And then third, as you go into it, the choice of curriculum goes two ways. One, like many resourceful parents, you can look it up and find out what you like, what's interesting to you. And second, you work with an advisor. So at HG, there's an advisor who can actually guide you and say, let's talk to your child. Let's find out what their learning style is. They take a diagnostic test also, and then they talk with the parents and find out, as a mom, what are you comfortable with? What is your learning style? Are you more visual, so that you match that with the child? Your teaching style, and you match that so that the journey with the child is a lot smoother as far as learning is concerned.
And for those who are already thinking of homeschooling, the next question would have to be, okay, I'm going to homeschool my kids now. Can I homeschool for as long as I want because I'm already homeschooling them? Is there a timeline for this?
Sure. So we follow programs like Homeschool Global that are accredited by the DepEd. We have to follow a certain cadence as well. So there's a school year, just like every school. So we follow, this year is the school year 2020 to 2021. And ideally, every child finishes within 8 to 10 months, like in a school. So that's the cadence. The difference, though, with homeschooling and in a regular school, obviously, is you have the flexibility to dictate, what will my day look like? What will my week look like? I can flex in terms of what subjects, how much time to cover. As long as I finish within that time period, that cadence, I'll get the official record and I can get promoted to the next level. Go ahead.
Talking about that, so we had an option for this quarantine to just chill at home and not do anything, but we wanted our kids to be productive, and that's the flexibility that you're talking about. We wanted to do as much work in completion during this quarantine period, so when this thing is all over, now we have the luxury of probably going to a vacation instead of being tied down.
Or for moms like you and me, Joy, we can just wake up and not have to think about homeschool.
Yeah,
there you go. So that's when I was playing basketball, I just recently retired last November. Even if I was on, let's say the kids had their vacation already, but I had basketball, we still couldn't travel because I had my schedule. But now that I'm retired, now I can work around the progress of their work. So if they'll finish earlier, okay, we can schedule something now. We can do this, we can do that. So that's the kind of flexibility that I really liked about homeschooling.
Yeah, most of the time, you know what, honestly, most families, if they really focus on the homeschooling, they can actually get it done in 8 months. So it just depends on how they want to space it out and how many breaks they want to take. But if you're really focused with it, you can actually finish a whole lot earlier than you would in the conventional school. So that's one of the advantages, especially now. My kids can't go anywhere. They have nothing else to distract them. So they're getting a lot of work done.
Yeah. So and that's why earlier when I was talking about the big S and the big A, right? Those questions. The word you use, Doug, is one of the big words that we see as a benefit. Flexible. And then there's personalized. Those are the two big words that, from an education standpoint, are actually advantageous to the learning of the child. So the big A, which is why I shared, even at the college level, they're doing very well academically because you have the flexibility to cater it and tailor fit it to the child based on how they are, their pacing, their interests. So yeah, those definitely, I totally echo what you said. Flexibility is a big thing.
There's a question here online, and this person's asking if your child has an above average grade, for example, does homeschooling also do acceleration, or it doesn't apply for homeschool students?
Yeah, so because it's accredited, right, it follows the same system in a school. If you're able to demonstrate that the child's proficiency hits the next level or a level higher using a certain test measure, then yes, in our system, in our program, they can be accelerated like in a school. But do we encourage that? That's the question, right? And Joy is ready to say something about that. Go, attack.
I think we always have to think about a child as a total person, right? A child develops physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. And sometimes when you want to push them so hard academically, let's say if they're gifted, they could do it, right? But then some other aspects may suffer. Several of our sons actually all our sons tested in the gifted spectrum. However, we decided we actually want more time with them. We want more time with, your kids are probably the same. When you homeschool them, it's because of the homeschooling situation, I think. But what happened was when we thought about it, we realized, there's so many other areas where they still need to grow. It's not just about their mental capacity, right? Because if you push them so hard, fine, maybe they can go to college at 14, 15, but then emotionally, do they really have that maturity or even spiritually? And so we want everything to be balanced. So as we homeschool, we think about it as a lifestyle. Yes. How do we accelerate by keeping them in their same level? So they stay at their level. However, we enrich the learning experience. If they want to cover books that are higher than their level, that's fine. We can enrich their level, but we don't advance them to the next level because we want every year of their lives for them to grow in wisdom, in their physical abilities, in their stature, and favor with God, favor with others. So we follow the Luke 2:52 principle in the Bible, where it's really about making sure our children develop holistically, not just in one aspect of who they are.
Yeah.
So you give them higher academic content without necessarily promoting them several levels up, is what you're trying to say.
Yeah. So how old can they start homeschooling their kids?
How early?
Yeah. So,
How early? Yes, how early?
Yeah, following DepEd's guidelines also, 3.5, right? As early as that, moving up, like in a preschool scenario. Although the accreditation starts officially at 5 years old, where they're kindergarten. DepEd starts at K, and then they go up to 12, right? So that's how that's the level that they will get the formal accreditation and records. But you can, in principle, you can start up a child homeschooling from birth, right? I mean, you're teaching them things like how to eat. So from a broad philosophical standpoint, you homeschool as soon as you're teaching them life lessons. But from an academic formal education standpoint, really the accreditation starts at 5 years old.
And also another question before we end. Are the books in Homeschool Global only Christian books? Because I had somebody who had a concern with that and asked, are all your books all Christian based? Is it all biblical based? I said, well, for Doug and I, we chose our books to be Christian based, biblically based. But I said there are other options. So Edric, are there other books in Homeschool Global?
Of course, what we like to say, right? The world is our classroom. So you can actually have your kids study anything. That's the beauty of homeschooling. But for HG, the responsibility that parents have to get the accreditation is to make sure they cover books that are accredited by the Department of Education. So does it mean that they're all Christian? Is that a requirement? For DepEd, no. But for HG, because we are a Christian organization, we add required Christian content. So you can have your child cover anything you want, but for it to be accredited, it needs to be DepEd compliant, and it needs to have certain content required by HG because of our core values, such as every family must cover Bible and character. Every family must cover science that is creation-based science, right? So those would be the key things. Now, if a parent is of a different religious background, so at Homeschool Global, we have almost all major religions. We have Muslims, and we have a number of good friends who are Muslims who are in the program. We have Buddhists, we have Jehovah's Witnesses, Iglesia ni Cristos, we have Dating Daan even for Philippine scenario. We have Hindus, we have Roman Catholics, we have Protestants of different denominations. So religion is not a requirement. What do they do about the Christian content that is required? For many of them, in their own words, just like a classmate I had. I went to Ateneo, which is a Roman Catholic Jesuit school. He was a Muslim prince, and he had to cover all of the religious content also. So what he did, like many of the families do, is they treat it as an academic subject, right? Like, I don't necessarily have to embrace the beliefs here, but I will cover it because it's an academic requirement. That's what they've done. So that's how we frame it. Have them study whatever you want, but for it to be accredited because of our government accreditation, DepEd, and then because we're Christian, cover those Christian content that I mentioned. And if it's not something that, again, is aligned with your belief system, no problem. Treat it as an academic exercise.
So before we end, I'm sure a lot of our fans and followers are wondering, how does homeschooling material look like? Okay, so before we end, I'll just flip the camera here.
Those are our preference.
So this is our preference. This is obviously this is Gavin's first grade. These are his life packs. Okay, and then this is Scarlett's third grade, and then we have Kendra's. Yes, I would like to say I did the organizing, but I didn't. So, honey, open one of Kendra's math subjects. So here's Kendra's life pack. I'm sure a lot are very interested what it looks like. So this is the material. This covers one whole school year, right?
Yeah, and broken down into units.
Broken down into units. So for math, okay. So
the nice thing about that one is that you can take the little booklets with you on trips, right? You don't have to bring something super heavy.
Yeah.
So that's actually the nice thing about that particular curriculum.
Modular.
Yes, that's right. So
this is Kendra's material. So what if a mom or dad is not so good in math? How to go about that?
Joy, you can answer that.
Joy, paano yan?
Yeah, two things. Number one, like you guys, you can get a tutor. Number two, you find curriculum that will do the heavy lifting for you. So for example, for Joy, since she can't teach Elijah's taking differential calculus. He's 17. There's no way my wife can teach that to him, right? So
Can you? Can you?
No, I can't.
That's beyond my math as well. So, so go ahead. So we connected him to an online site called Khan Academy. And Khan Academy does
I know that.
It teaches him on his own, and it helps engage him getting the project, getting the work done without Joy or I having to learn it and teach it to him. So that's one way, Doug. Any subject that you might struggle with, you can work with content online. So at HG, there's two online curriculums that can do that also. One is like the one you had, Alpha Omega, but it's called Ignitia. So it's all online, and there's modules and lessons and lectures. We're doing it.
Grade 3 up?
Yeah, no, all levels. And then there's BJU, Bob Jones University, DLO, distance learning online. So that's another option. I think Jennifer, right? You're a good friend, our sister-in-law. They like that. They like the DLO, and even Jenny. So those would be
I have influenced her to use LifePack.
You did?
Oh, really?
Yeah. She's doing it now with Tegan and Jalen.
Okay.
Good for you. Good for you.
Yeah. All right. And also one thing to add, with all the books, they come with a teacher's guide. So it teaches you how to explain it and activities on how you can even enhance the learning of your children. All the books that I've gotten for the kids have a teacher's guide, and it also comes with an answer key.
Yeah, that's so important, answer key.
Yeah.
Like, Elijah, he's doing advanced physics, right? And I can't teach that to him, but I grade his test because I have the answer keys.
Just look at the answers.
So,
okay. Well, guys, thanks so much for joining us. A lot has been answered, and
I just want to ask, before we say goodbye, before we bid everybody goodbye, how do they get to inquire for Homeschool Global? How do they go about? And because now it's the quarantine, we're still on quarantine, how do they enroll?
because I believe there are certain procedures before you can actually enroll, right? You have to join seminars and all these things.
Yeah, so we've digitized all of that because of
Okay.
this situation. And even prior to this, we have a good CEO now, Ryan Gallagher, and he's helped shift a lot of the things to technology. So even before this ECQ, by God's grace, there's online enrollment, there's online orientation. So you can do that by just logging in homeschoolglobal.com. And you should be able to do everything through technology as of this time. So that's what they could do. That would be, I guess, the next step after we've enumerated a number of those. What is your reason, right? Look for a group that can help you.
That's an orientation.
And then you can get a lot of the stuff for HG, for Homeschool Global, by going onto that website.
Great.
Thank you guys. Thank you, Joy.
Thanks,
Thank you,
guys.
Edwin.
Thanks so much.
We're glad that your
You guys
homeschooling journey
stay
is going
safe.
good.
It's very good.
Yes.
Very, very good.
Very timely as well. So thank you so much, guys, and we hope to see you when this is all over. So, yeah.
Take care.
Take care. God
God bless you
bless.
guys.
Bye.
See you soon. Bye.
See you soon. Bye.